Welcome to BiblioTECH, building a collaborative, future-oriented instruction program for LIS students. I'll begin by talking about the background. BiblioTECH was based on North Carolina State University's Library Career Jumpstart program, a program started and run by the Library Fellows at NCSU. As the NCSU Library received applications for its Fellows program, it noticed that many applicants were lacking in knowledge or skills in library technology. As NCSU has no library school, it was determined they could begin a week-long skills-developing summer program to help meet this need. The Jumpstart program debuted in summer 2020 as a free, immersive, virtual program with the goals of teaching and building foundational tech skills, exposing library students to library technology careers, and allowing students the opportunity to network with peers and professionals. The ultimate goal was to prepare first-year library students to begin careers in library technology upon graduation. I participated in the second iteration of the program in summer 2021 and was able to bring this perspective to planning our own version of the Jumpstart program, BiblioTECH.
For our first year of BiblioTECH, we made it explicit that it was a pilot, and this enabled us to do a couple of things. One, it is a big flag that we are learning, and we wanted to make sure that we left lots of space to be iterative and adaptive and to listen as we went. Another core element of our planning process was, in order to build relevant content for students, we had lots of ideas of what we thought could be good and useful to them with different technologies and panels, but we really didn't feel comfortable building something for someone without them with us. So we brought in students and their perspectives in two key ways. One, we made sure that we had some students on our organizing committee. So as a pilot, keeping the program small, we decided to focus it on the Montreal area because we had two library schools, right? We have EBC from the Université de Montréal, and we have the program at McGill. So we had one student from each program on our committee to offer feedback and their perspectives. Furthermore, Nadine had Clara and I believe Carolyn go into her class that she was teaching to speak to students and to get their feedback through a survey that we designed. We wanted to know not just what they wanted to learn and what they were interested in to have offered, but also their comfort levels and their perspectives on technology. And so that would help us accomplish two things. One, it will help us level the workshops to the appropriate space. We all know that sometimes with workshops, it can be a bit of a drop the needle game on a record, right? If you put it in the middle of the song, maybe they're not going to get it unless they know the album really well. So that was another way for us to help foolproof our curriculum. We also decided early on some core components of what BiblioTECH would look like. And that would be like NCSU's Jumpstart, a virtual format. We wanted a mix of hands-on workshops and panels just to kind of give people's brains a little bit of change and also to offer different perspectives so they can learn skills. But there was also an identified need to hear about career planning. So the panels would be a source for that. We wanted lots of space for feedback and assistance, so office hours and spacing of the workshops. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we wanted sessions to be accessible in both English and French. We weren't sure how we were going to get all the way to a completely bilingual program with the resources we had for the pilot, but we wanted to try. So making sure that everybody could speak in the language that they're comfortable in, that regardless of the language of the session that they were attending, that they would have access to materials and assistance to help them in the language they were most comfortable in.
For this program, we solicited applications from both McGill and UDEM students. We used Lime Survey for the application process. We chose Lime Survey because it allows file upload, and we wanted the CVs or resumes to be included as part of the application. The application itself included questions about the potential applicants' interest in the program, their perspectives on technology, and accessibility. In total, we received about 23 completed applications and about 10 additional applications that were partially completed. The application form was translated and was available in both French and English. We spent some time thinking about how to evaluate the applications in as objective a way as possible and as fairly as possible. We decided to sort of apply a similar method to content analysis where you have two independent raters at least, or two evaluators in this case, so that each application was evaluated by at least two of our organizing committee members. We divided them by French English, so those folks who can read and understand French were given two applications in French, and those who were not able to read or understand French easily were given the English applications. We developed a rating scale, so a rubric, a very simple rubric that involved, a 4-point scale with excellent, good, average, and poor. And with the stipulation that if any response from an applicant was given a rating of poor, that the evaluator would have to write a comment about why they assigned that rating. And then we would discuss that. So we also gave further consideration to applicants who identified themselves as having background identities or personal lived experiences that could contribute to having an overall really diverse group of participants. That was really important to us as well. And so in that case, part of the application process was to flag an application to discuss if that applicant self-identified as someone who might be able to contribute in that way. We also discussed applicants more deeply who were in Nadine's course. So we had promised as part of their, when we had introduced this idea to them and asked them to sort of give us some feedback on whether they would be interested in this type of training, we had promised that they would have like a higher level of consideration or first consideration to the spots that were available. So we decided to flag those as well in the application form or in the evaluation form to discuss further. Luckily, I believe all the students from Nadine's class who applied were accepted. So I don't think there were any students who applied from the course that were rated or evaluated as poor or average, for example. And then we met to discuss any discrepancies. So since there were two evaluators looking at each application, if one evaluator said it was excellent and the other said it was average, we all took a look at that more closely and had them walk us through their thought process on why they gave them that rating. So that helped to sort of take care of the fact that some folks were just unlikely to give excellent to anyone, and others were, and in those applications that had some information that was really compelling and some that wasn't, and then we were able to discuss that a little bit further. We ended up accepting 12, of whom 10 ended up participating in the program. So a couple of the applicants who we accepted were just not able to commit to a full week program at that point in time anymore. And the breakdown of the applications in terms of who were accepted is who participated. We had 7 students from the Université de Montréal, and we had 3 McGill students participating. The finalized programs include a mix of panels inviting librarians and information professionals from across institutions in Quebec, and a series of practical hands-on workshops. So the first day started with a welcome where we allowed students to introduce themselves and just chatted more informally. Since it was hosted totally virtually, we wanted to make sure that the cohort felt connected to each other. We had an introductory workshop on research data management, so just this idea of organizing information in files and digital files and information to sort of set the stage for future workshops such as Git and GitHub and Python as well. We then moved into the Git and GitHub section, followed by Q&A. We had daily check-ins in the morning and daily office hours in the afternoons. Our second day started with a panel on career paths in library technology, where guest speakers discussed their career paths from library school to their current jobs. So the panelists provided details on the key required technological skills for their current position and whether they would have done anything differently to be prepared for their current roles. We then had some practical workshops on using Excel to clean up messy data and then bringing those data into OpenRefine, the same data set, and further cleaning the data set. On Wednesday, we had a panel, What I Didn't Know When I Started, where panelists presented reflections on what they wish they knew when they first started working in technological library roles. Each panelist shared at least one moment when they felt at a loss and what they did to overcome that situation or what they learned through that experience. We also had a panel on Thursday on applying to your first library job, and that's where we had a couple hiring managers actually talk about what they look for when they're hiring, including tips on writing a successful CV and cover letter, interviewing, networking, and where and how to look for jobs. And then we had an intensive double Python workshop in the afternoon. And the final day included a showcase of technology, including that we use here throughout Quebec and Canada, including Borealis Dataverse, Easy Proxy, Sambera, and SpringShare LibApps. And then we ended with a couple workshops on digital preservation and web archiving to show sort of how to practically implement many of these skills into a job and into that setting. And here's a cute photo of the whole group. I think we were supposed to be holding up our pets or something that we had nearby. I have a stuffed unicorn for some reason, but this was all on the first day.
We have learned some important lessons from running this first iteration of the program, which we will apply to our second iteration scheduled for next summer. We sent out a participant survey following the program, and I am happy to report that we had very positive participant feedback overall. That being said, based on the results of the survey and our own observations, we have a few ideas of what can be improved. In place of one-on-one tech check appointments ahead of the program week, we are considering doing group install fests that would be arranged based on type of operating system. During the program, we would like to start the week with more icebreakers, giving participants and organizers a better chance to get to know one another and to build an environment of trust and safety. We will try to use more polls throughout the week for group engagement. We would like to encourage the use of the chat function in Zoom for more informal commentary and connections. We would also consider having an in-person meetup, either to kick off the week and/or to celebrate towards the end of the week as another aspect of community building. During breaks between sessions, we would encourage the use of on-camera check-ins just to get the face-to-face confirmation that everyone is engaging and feeling okay about the program. We also have wider considerations around the overall format of the week, such as whether to have in-person days or half days, or even to embrace a more equal distribution of time in person versus time online. In our Montreal context, we are also considering the language aspect. We attempted to do a primarily English program with simultaneous French note-taking, but we are considering whether running dual programs, as in one entirely in English and one entirely in French, might actually be more manageable. In terms of the program content, the participants found the most challenging workshop to be our Git workshop, which kicked off the week. We are considering moving it to later in the week, making time to do a workshop on command line first. We have also debated the merits of having the workshops build off each other day by day towards a final project, versus keeping the workshops independent, in an effort to ensure that even if a participant feels lost in one workshop, it doesn't limit their ability to participate in the rest. Finally, participant feedback has pointed us towards building in more contextualization, such as real-world projects and examples, to complement each workshop topic, as well as more practical and hands-on exercises for participants. In exchange, we may have less of the panel sessions and look to combine a few of our panels into one instead. Although we have a few decisions still to make, we are looking forward to building on the success of this year's program to ensure that next year's program will provide participants with what they need. Thank you all for your attention. We now look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thanks very much for your presentation this morning. We're just waiting to see if any questions come through in Slido. So you're all welcome to join slido.com, use the hashtag access. Will the program be open to more participants from other library schools in future years?
Um, Yeah, I guess I'll take a stab at it. I think for now, we're still going to probably focus on the two Montreal library schools that we have, just as a bit of a scoping, I think, mostly. But we would encourage, I think, if anyone wanted to implement the program closer to one of the other library schools in Canada, definitely, or the US, let us know too. The NCSU group was also really open to meeting, they met with us before we started just to give feedback and give some advice. So we would encourage it being implemented elsewhere, but for our sake, we're going to probably stay focused in our area.
The one thing I would like to add is that we had always said that we would do this as a free endeavor, right? We wanted to be a cost zero except for time and of course having access to a computer, but even then we could offer support. That was also the idea. So if we're doing it partially virtually, partially in person, the distance becomes an issue if we go into traveling costs or anything of that nature. So I think that's also why we are focusing on Montreal to begin with, just because we are here. But as the project grows, if anybody, as Carolyn says, if anybody wants to come knock on our door and see if we can maybe have, sort of two Jumpstart programs collaborate and maybe have some of the events be bridge events where we could have discussions of different contexts, I think that would be, quite extraordinary. So that would be lovely.
The questions are pouring in, so we're going to keep you for a couple more minutes. But what were some of the biggest obstacles or wins regarding bilingualism?
I can take that one. Time, resources, in the sense that what often happens in these situations is that the French speakers can do some of it in English, but would like to have more content in French. And so I would say that while some of the documents that were given in advance were translated, because that was pretty easier to do. I would say timing, so factoring in how much time it takes to translate. So getting documents in earlier from presenters so that we can have time to translate, and then simultaneous accompaniment during. So it's not, a full simultaneous translation, but it was sort of on chat or on another document. We were making notes in the other language, and the team was very small in terms of doing that. And then the flip side is that mostly the English speakers, if they had no French at all, then during some panels, we had told the presenters that they could speak in whichever language they preferred. And that might have created a bit, more of a disconnect. So as, we said in the presentation, we're definitely looking at those questions again, not to remove the bilingual aspect, because I think we need to continue on that path of building those bridges, but to think about more efficient ways of doing it, and maybe by sort of asking everyone to participate more in that if they are able to. So we're looking at it, but definitely the obstacles are more. They're definitely not goodwill. They're definitely not everybody putting it a bit of effort. Everybody did, both students and organizers. It's just time and resources. That's the big thing.
One more question for you folks. Were the Git and Python tutorials derived from existing resources, software carpentry, or handmade?
Yeah, I suppose it was a bit of a combination of things. I can speak, I know for OpenRefine and Excel, those were sort of built off of some existing workshops we had. Like one existing workshop we had at McGill that actually Alisa was involved in, was used to reform a bit for our Excel. And then we did a combo with a library carpentry for OpenRefine, I think, as well as one from, I'm blanking, I think it was from the UVic, had a really great OpenRefine. It's all cited in our documents, but I can check on that. But I can hand it over. I know Kristen was involved with the Git workshop, so.
Yeah, and the Git and GitHub was also based off of library carpentry, if I remember correctly, with some changes made for our particular context. But I think that that's one in particular that we think that we can improve for next year for our participants.
And the Python workshop was also adapted from a carpentry's workshop as well. Yeah.
Yeah.